Or you need a beer first?
I had enough beer on Friday.
Boom. We are back. This is going to be episode 2, part 2 of our image series. And if you didn't listen to part 1, make sure you go check out episode 6, where we talked about image formats, stock images, and vector icons, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So make sure you go check out episode 6 on that on WeaverRadio.com. Head up to the archive button and make sure you can listen to that episode first. Or you can listen after this one. It's not a requirement.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job. High five. Digital high five.
Yeah, digital high five. Sweet. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about how to get images into your websites. Okay. A lot of us are RapidWeaver users, so there's obviously drag and drop as an option. We have warehouse. We can warehouse our image. And then also after that, we're going to be talking about a little bit on optimization and SEO of images. So you want to start off, Greg? You wanted me to start off? What are we going to do?
Well, I think we should introduce what the different ways you can get an image into your RapidWeaver site.
Yes.
And explain a little bit those. I think we've identified 3 ways that people can add images to their sites.
Mm-hmm.
One is obviously the warehouse method. I think, that for users who don't know what warehousing means, it means you upload images to either your website or a different service, and you embed those images into your RapidWeaver site or project by referencing the image URL directly.
Mm-hmm.
So you manage all of your images outside of RapidWeaver. For a lot of users, this can be great because you don't have to go into RapidWeaver. You don't have to export or publish your site again. You can manipulate your image, re-upload it, change the size, make it black and white, and those changes are instantly reflected on your website. No need to touch RapidWeaver. You can do it. Your client can do it. If you work with somebody, your co-working can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be at your computer to make those changes. You could be anywhere.
Yep. But on the flip side, right, for the kind of the beginner user, obviously they are going to be doing drag and drop, right? So obviously you can drag and drop images. In the last episode, we did talk about there's certain types like SVG files that you can't really drag and drop into it just because of the nature of what that format is. So I'm not going to review that now. Go back and listen to that. SVG graphics are cool, but they are different. Now, there are different ways that you can add images into RapidWeaver via drag and drop, right? Obviously, in RapidWeaver itself, without the Stacks plugin, there's like the style text page that you can drag and drop images on, right? And then same thing if you use the the default text stack, which is a style text container, right? You can add images directly into there, okay? But with that said, most of us are not doing it that way, right? Most of us are using the Stack plugins. If you're doing drag and drop, right, you're drag and dropping either into 2 places, either directly into the Stacks edit page where all your content is, or there is a setting for an image that you can drag and drop into the Stacks settings itself, right? So those are 2 primary ways in which you can drag and drop images, right?
You're referring to the stack settings for third-party stacks.
Yes,
correct?
Yes. Or I mean, like in the background, like you can add a background image to a default stack. So, that has an image well inside the settings as well. But yes, so yes, third-party stacks and some default stacks have some image drop zone areas in the settings. And then there is in the content inside Stacks edit mode where all your text and everything is, there are, depending on the type of stack it is, you can also add a image directly, drag and drop it into there. Okay. Now there are pretty different, pretty big differences in terms of how they're handled both ways, right? So let's just say, let's start off with the stacks that you add to the actual settings. Okay. Those, you pretty much get what you add into there. Okay. So if you have to be careful, you have to make sure that you optimize those images first, because Stacks the plugin has no protection. It doesn't protect you from adding a 5 megabyte file into there. Okay, that file will get published as it is added into the settings. Okay, it is untouched. Okay,
Yes.
so that's a great thing. As long as you know that you need to pre-optimize that image beforehand. Okay. Now, a lot of stacks allow you to add an image directly into the content side, and Stacks does do some optimization of images that you add into that you drag and drop into the content area. So outside the settings, not in the page inspector, but in the main content area. But you have control over that. And a lot of people don't understand this is, if you drag and drop an image into there, into the main content area, you can double click it. And when you double click it, you enter into Stacks. It has its own little image editor actually built into the Stacks plugin. And when you double click on an image, you enter in that image editor and you'll see the settings in the settings pane change. And you can do things such as, by default, I think it constrains all images to be 1200 pixels by 1200 pixels. So this is protecting you from yourself of adding in that 5 megabyte image, right? That's 5,000 pixels by 10,000 pixels. Okay. So Stacks is going to potentially transform that image slightly to protect you from yourself.
I should add, it's under the hood. It still retains that original 5 megabyte image.
Correct. Under the hood, Stacks is retaining the original image so that if you ever change your mind later on and you want to change that, of course, all these settings are customizable for yourself, right? So you can tweak those. Okay. So now that you know that those settings are there, it's very useful. And Stacks can do some other minor image manipulation, like you can add borders and it can add, I think, drop shadows and things of that. So it can do some very basic image styling and editing. Okay. Now, important thing to mention though is when it does do that, it actually adds those to the image itself. So it's not adding like a CSS border or a CSS shadow to the image. It's actually adding a border or shadow to the actual image. Okay, so
it is destructive.
Correct.
It is destructive.
Correct. Obviously, the original image is still intact, but the exported image is modified. Okay.
Yep.
So if you ever drag in, let's say you know that you want this particular image to be 1,500 pixels wide or 2,000 pixels wide. Okay, you know that you want that, and you're wondering why. The exported image is only 1,200 pixels. That is exactly what's going on. So double click on that image and you'll see the settings that Stacks has modified for you. Okay. Now, another thing that Stacks does for us out of the box is it actually generates Retina images for us as well, if it can, based on the image that you've added into it. So that's pretty interesting. Isaiah did a great talk at the Weaver Space conference last year. I released the video for free on my YouTube channel, so go ahead and check that out. And he talks about how all of that happens actually. So how all the Retina graphics and all that stuff is done inside the default image stack. So that's pretty good and very useful information. I recommend that you go check that out. That video that Isaiah did at the Weaver Space conference it was actually 2016. Still 100% relevant today. It was a great talk, gave you a lot of really valuable insights in how Stacks behind the scenes helps you optimize your images in your websites.
Yes, definitely. I have my stuff to add. You have no idea how many times users will come to me and say, "Why is my website slow?" Because I'm hosting the website, and I'll bring up the web inspector, and I'll see that their homepage is 10, 20, 30 megabytes in file size. It's like, well, I have broadband internet. I get 50 megabits per second, which is 4 or 5 megabytes a second, and that still takes me some time to download.
Yep.
You can imagine a user on a 3G, 4G cellular phone trying to load your website.
Yep.
They'll run out of memory. It'll take them minutes, to load. So it happens. It's very common. So yes, please be very cognitive. And if you want a pro tip, something that I like to do is I like to quit RapidWeaver, and that's important. Quit RapidWeaver first. Joe doesn't know where I'm going with this. He's looking at me like very cautious. But if you drag your RapidWeaver project into DaisyDisk, after you quit RapidWeaver, you can kind of navigate through the internal structure of your project and find out what pages on your website are using the most, are largest, using the most size. So you can kind of optimize those pages, find out where those big images are, so you can really trim your project, trim your website, and maximize your performance with those.
Cool.
A little off topic.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know where you're going with that. I was like, uh-oh, what's he going to tell users to do now?
Yeah. Quit RapidWeaver first.
Cool. RapidWeaver? Yeah.
RapidWeaver. Sorry, I have a little bit of
Wascally Wabbit.
Yes.
So actually, funny enough, I had a customer just this week, I think it was a couple days ago, on WeaverSpace, was wondering what was eating up his disk space on his web server, right? And he actually found some quick little PHP snippet that basically scanned his web directory and basically outputted a folder structure with all of the kind of, next to it, the size that folder or file was taking up. And with that, he was able to find what was eating up some disk space. And I thought that was pretty cool. It was actually something I was actually going to have a free stack called Server Info. And I was going to throw that into that. Thought that could be useful for some people.
Yeah, it's pretty useful, but to be honest, at least Chili Dog, there's a thing called disk usage that will actually do that.
Yeah, we asked him if his cPanel allowed you to do that, and his host didn't have anything like that. So yeah, there you go. Quality hosting company, guys. Chili Dog.
Yeah, it makes life so much easier.
Yep.
You should be able to see that kind of insight. But yeah, interesting.
Anything else you got for drag and drop?
Drag and drop. The biggest caveats for me is how it affects my RapidWeaver project.
Mm-hmm.
Getting it. It grows very quickly, and I like to keep it. I like to keep my projects as portable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to be able to keep them as thin and light as possible. So I tend to not use the drag and drop features. I tend to lean towards warehousing for the extra control, and I know it's a more advanced topic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So don't jump right into it just because that's what Greg said to do. But get comfortable with the drag and drop. Know what the controls that Joe's referring to. Know how they work. Know how the Retina images work. And as you become a better web designer, web builder, move on to these more advanced topics, and I think users will start to really appreciate the multiple options of how you can manage images in RapidWeaver.
Yep. Cool. So let's jump back onto the warehouse bandwagon a little bit. What are some ways? So we described what warehouse images are. Is basically you have a folder on your server, okay, and let's say it's chilidoghosting.com/images, okay, and basically whatever images I upload into that folder, let's say I have banner.jpg, just as an example, right? So if I upload an image called banner.jpg into chilidoghosting.com/images, okay, obviously the URL to that image is going to be chilidoghosting.com/images/banner.jpg, right? So that is kind of the 30-second rundown of what warehouse images is, right? You have a folder on your server that you could just upload. Now, we'll talk about various ways to upload things to your server, okay, in a minute, but that's just kind of, what is a warehouse? That is what it is, right? It is, you have a folder on your server, you upload images to that folder, and then a lot of, FTP clients make it easy. You could just right click and say copy URL, but basically that's how you determine the URL. You have a folder inside your web domain, and it's just basically your domain / the folder name / the name of the image, right? Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So
it sounds more complicated than it is.
Yes.
Definitely sounds more complicated. Yes.
So
to be honest, I recommend people use subdomains instead of subfolders like that. So this in a subdomain, it would be images.chilidoghosting.com instead of chilidoghosting.com/images. But that's another topic for another day, maybe, on why that's important. Or
why not get into it now, Greg? Go for it.
You want me to go for it?
Go
Okay.
for it.
Ready?
Go for it, man.
All right. If you use a subdomain, it's what would be called a cookieless subdomain. So what happens when you make a request to a web server, it passes cookies in that request, which is just extra data. And for images, that extra data is not relevant. So if you want to reduce the request size and maximize the speed, you use a cookieless subdomain. So basically just create a subdomain, images or warehouse.yourdomain.com. And the browser will not pass that extra information over to that subdomain. So it'll speed things up a little bit. Not something most users will be able to measure, but if we're going to be nitpicky.
Yes, nitpicky. I mean, every little byte counts, right? I mean, if yes. So basically,
there's another thing. I mean, there's one other thing, and this is becoming less relevant in newer browsers with newer web servers. And it's that the browsers would maintain so many connections to a server for a URL. So if you loaded chili.hosting, typically, your Internet Explorers and everything like that would open up a maximum number of 6 connections to the website, right? And that could be to download the main page, to download any of the CSS files or JavaScript files, etc. So when you put your images on a subdomain, like images.chili.hosting.com, the browser will see that as a different URL and open up another connection. So that would actually parallelize the loading of your website to speed things up. Now, I say older browsers, what's moving forward now is HTTP2, which doesn't require you to do this technique. This technique is actually referred to as domain sharding. And, it's very prevalent in your IE 6, 7, 8, et cetera, et cetera. But if your browser supports HTTP2, and for those listening, chili.hosting does support HTTP2, so I've already crossed that leap. So the browser will basically automatically do this and see load these resources and everything in parallel without having to do the extra work. So it's
yes,
nice,
I am really excited for HTTP2. As more and more websites get it, because it does allow parallel connections to the server. It's very cool stuff. Now, if your host isn't as awesome as Greg, you can kind of band-aid that solution if you were to use Cloudflare, and Cloudflare will basically give you HTTP2 requests, at least for things that it caches, right? So images and CSS files and JavaScript files, right? So all of that stuff can be, put through Cloudflare, and then you can kind of get the HTTP2 benefits through using the Cloudflare service. So it's very cool stuff.
Yeah, Cloudflare is nice. My only note is that if you thought using a cookieless subdomain was advanced, I would not venture into Cloudflare. And it does make things a little complicated because now you're managing your DNS and all those settings in a third party. So, a lot of people will see this in their control panel and not know that control panel isn't relevant anymore, and make changes and understand why those settings aren't taking effect. So just
fair enough, but
understand what you're doing.
Yeah, but setting up a cookieless domain, I think, is actually probably more difficult for the average person than swapping DNS over to Cloudflare.
I'm just saying, if you thought that was too advanced, or something like that.
Yeah. True, fair enough. So, kind of going into how can we warehouse our image? What tools can we use to actually warehouse those images? I have 2 tools that I recommend you could potentially use. I guess we'll go over 3. One is kind of a very specialized app. I discovered it, a couple months ago. I thought it was kind of a cool thing. It's called Dropshare. And, all those cool, like, little menu bar apps, like you have like Droppler, which I use actually. Then there's cloud.net something, MyCloud or whatever. And then there's a bunch of other ones, right? And basically you drag a file up to your menu bar, and then it uploads it and gives you a little URL, right? Well, Dropshare is a cool app because it allows you to have that, but you can configure your own SFTP server, right? So you can configure Dropshare to, when you drag a file onto it, it'll automatically upload that file to your server to a specific folder, and then copy the URL to that image to your clipboard. Like, That's pretty cool for a web developer. That if you want to warehouse a lot of images, that could be a really great workflow for you. So check that out. It's a pretty cool app. Its UI is a little funky and a little old, but it works really well, and they do continually update it.
I agree. I actually picked that up when it was on sale. I used to use Cloudly.
That was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, Cloudly.
Yeah. I just got tired of some. I mean, their UI was awesome, and they keep adding some really nice features and everything like that. But I just kept hitting their limits and getting some nags from it. And I was just kind of like, I don't want the subscription service.
Yeah.
I have plenty of. I run my ship, so I have plenty of ways to do it myself, and Dropshare was ideal for me.
Yeah,
so.
It's actually cool. I haven't played around with it too much, but I know you can configure it can have its own little download page, kind of like how Droplr does, so that or any of the other ones do. So you can actually have a download page that will then users can click to actually download the file. It's pretty cool. I'm impressed with it. It's a very cool app. So if you haven't seen that one, that's a nice one to check out. The next classification of apps is kind of your FTP apps. I'm not going to dive into this a lot. Episode 4, we talk about FTP a lot, but my FTP app of choice is Transmit. You get what you pay for. And with Transmit, when you upload, when you configure an SFTP connection to your server, you can actually, whenever you upload a file, as long as you configure your connection properly, you can right click on that file and say copy URL, and it will give you a URL that you can then paste into RapidWeaver or whatever, and get access to that image. And that's not a feature just to Transmit. I know a lot of FTP apps have that feature.
That's kind of cool. I use Transmit all the time. I never use that feature, but it's cool to know it's there.
Cool.
Transmit's a great app. I can't recommend, I just can't recommend people get anything else. If, people ask me what to use, I always just use the old tried and true.
Yep. Now, probably what we should have led with is probably, the beginner way of warehousing, like how do you get started, is RapidWeaver has something called resources built into your project, right? It's in the sidebar. You can add folders, or you can create structures of, stuff, or you can just add files into that resources area. And then RapidWeaver will automatically upload those for you to your server. Okay. And then if you click on that file inside the sidebar, you can actually copy the link of where that file will be after RapidWeaver publishes it. So that is a easy way. I find personally, if you have a lot of files, right, that could be a little difficult to manage that way, since you have to manage them kind of one by one. But if you just have a handful of files, that could be a great way to do that. Now also, I think in RapidWeaver 7, I think you have the ability to copy those files into your project. It's been a while since I used that feature, Greg. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm in the same boat as you.
Okay, I vaguely remember in 7 dot something, I think they added the ability to have those resources copy into the project.
Yeah.
Because originally they were linked on the file system, so that if you actually deleted them, the link to the file was gone. And I know they wanted to make project files portable. So yeah, if we are wrong on that, sorry, everybody, we'll just have to have a little bit of this. I'm sorry. If I'm wrong, you can give me the sad trombone. But I'm pretty sure that RapidWeaver has the ability to copy those resources into the project file. If I'm not, you can whip me later. So yeah. One thing I should say.
That'll be our first email to feedback@WeaverRadio.com.
Yeah. So SVGs, I talked about them a lot in the last episode. SVGs right now are a type of image that has to be warehoused. There is no other way to get an SVG file into your, I say that. Okay, there are a couple stacks out there that let you copy the actual raw SVG markup and paste it into the stack. Yes, that does work. You can actually do that straight in any HTML stack as well. So if you have an SVG file, you can copy that, paste it into an HTML stack, and it will display, right? It does work. But with that said, a lot of times, if you want to use that SVG in a particular stack, hopefully your stack does support warehousing. then you would have to warehouse that SVG file. I guess that kind of goes, another topic we could probably talk about is, how do you warehouse an image inside RapidWeaver, right? Primarily, we're talking about stacks here. And I know a lot of image stacks do support warehousing. A lot of them don't, right? There's a lot of free warehouse image stacks out there. And a lot of my image stacks, most of my image stacks support warehousing as well. So you can there's like a checkbox where you can toggle whether or not you want drag and drop or warehoused image, right? So, yeah, I know there are some developers that don't like supporting warehouse images because they know that's primarily for more advanced users, and it kind of hurts their support cost, right? Because a lot of times, people, when you're first starting to warehouse images, you don't understand really how to do that, and there's a lot of questions. There is kind of a learning curve, but hopefully, we iron some of those questions out today in this podcast.
Yeah, I think you gave a good brief introduction and kind of simplified that. It's not really a complicated subject. It's just, working independently outside of RapidWeaver and parallel in some regards to RapidWeaver, and understanding that you're making changes to your site, not on, in RapidWeaver, and doing this work and, understanding the consequences and how the pieces fit together. And that's what's important.
Yep. Now, there's actually another interesting solution for warehousing images that I had a customer this week tell me that they were using it when they were building their emails, right? Because when you're building an email using RapidWeaver, while you can use drag and drop, you kind of have to publish it to your web server, and it's a little funky, right? But warehousing images is the best way. And what he was using was, I never thought about this. He was using a service called Cloudinary, right? So Cloudinary is an interesting service. They have a very liberal free tier, which I don't understand how they could potentially have this free tier, but it's there. And essentially, you can upload an image, and then you can get a URL to that image, and then you can do all kinds of manipulations with that URL. You can make sure you can, get the correct size you need, and all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty interesting, service, especially their free stuff. You can do a lot with it. So that's an interesting way if you don't want to worry about warehousing of images locally, on your web server, then you can give something like Cloudinary a shot, where you upload the image to their service, and then they just basically give you a URL that you can then paste directly into RapidWeaver, and you're good to go.
Cloudinary is awesome.
Yeah,
that's a very good tip. Very good tip. I'm sorry, I only wish that I thought to mention it myself.
Haha, I beat you.
I know you beat me on this one. We're going to start like a tally board. We're not gonna have a preamble and tell each other our secrets. And we're gonna just have a tally board.
And then let's see.
Surprised.
Let's see what does this sound? Oh, there we go. It wasn't really winner-esque, huh? How about this one?
Yeah.
That's more of Greg is here. Greg's
yeah. Yes. I've actually known about Cloudinary for a long time. They make a really solid product. And I think, you could do, Joe mentioned you could do stuff like, sepia tone. Yep. You could do all sorts of rotations and manipulations of the image. You could do an amazing amount of stuff. You could turn the image from square to round. Yep. Yep. All sorts of stuff. So using it for email like that is a really good tip.
Yeah. So kind of a shameless plug. Another great way to manage images, okay, is my Total CMS. And it's a cool way. Just shameless plug. Sorry, Greg. Just thinking about it. In version 2, what made me think about it is actually Cloudinary. I added some of those features of Cloudinary into Total CMS version 2. So great way to edit images and warehouse them for your sites.
Yeah. I love images, and I make Weaver pics, and I'm dying to get that to a point where I can start beta testing that and starting to see that out to users. So I'm hoping
get that out there.
Hoping as soon as I know I have to.
Weaver pics.
As soon as the dust, I know as soon as the dust settles on so many other projects, that's going to be my focus.
I understand. Really, I was looking at. I opened up Day One, which is kind of a journaling app, and I haven't used it for a while. And I saw one of my last entries was my goals for 2017. And I maybe got like half of that stuff done, and I'm working on the other half, hopefully to finish by the end of this year. So yeah,
Off by one.
Exactly. Always underestimate how long it takes to do something. It's developer plague, right? Take what your estimate is and times it by 3, basically,
At least, especially if you're independent.
Yeah.
Especially if you're independent, the squirrels are strong.
Yeah. Oh man, the squirrels, they attack me too, man. Whew.
Yeah.
You got anything good planned for this week coming up?
This week, well, I want to continue knocking out some Forms Plus update. I have a few bug fixes to get together and clean up, and then focus my attention on Weaver picks. That's why it's on the top of my mind right now. So
okay, cool.
Yeah. So we talk about these images, and it gets me all riled up because I want to be hungry. I want to get back into it.
Yep.
So I'm like anxious. I'm excited about these projects and images and getting that back to still making progress. Still gonna have a killer week.
Yeah. I plan on by the end of this week or beginning of next week, hope to have maybe some beta testers testing out the new site. So I'll have it published to a secret domain where people can check it out and try to break it for me. That's the goal. So yeah,
Nice.
It's kind of one of those things where it's like, so I'm working with John Hawkins, and he's working on his part and I'm working on my part, and we're almost at the place where we can meet up. And it seems like it's once we meet up and join our 2 parts together, it'll be like, it'll go really quick.
Or a big merge conflict.
Don't say that. No, only think positive thoughts, Greg. Positive thoughts only.
Oh boy, we'll see.
Cool. Well, that about wraps it up for this this episode. We had a couple more things. Maybe we'll leak out one more image episode. We'll see for next week. But Greg, where can people reach you?
People can reach me at the same place: Chili Dog Software, Chili Dog Hosting, and on Twitter at Barshard or Chili Dog Host.
Sweet. Yep. I am at Joe Workman everywhere. If you want to send us any feedback, or if you want questions you want us to answer on the show live, go ahead and send us an email to feedback@weaverradio.com. And as always, check out all of our past episodes. If you haven't already listened to them, I don't know why you haven't. Go to weaverradio.com and go to the archives, and you can listen to all of our past episodes because me and Greg are just that awesome to listen to.
Yeah. If you made it this far, thank you.
Yes, congratulations. You get some sort of medal, right?
Yeah. Gold star. Fictional gold star.
Well, Greg should definitely get a gold star for listening to me, right? I mean, I'm a pain to listen to, I'm sure. Just ask my wife.
Digital high fives for everybody. Digital high fives for everybody.
Amen. If you are enjoying the show, please give us a quick 5-star rating over on iTunes. We'd appreciate it to get the word out so that everybody knows that this website is great. We have a lot. I've been getting some feedback personally, just like over DMs and stuff. And a lot of non-RapidWeaver users are actually listening to the show and getting a lot out of it. So very interesting. I love it. So if you are not a RapidWeaver user, thank you for listening. Check out RapidWeaver. We love it. And yeah, we didn't even talk about Adobe Muse kind of going the way of the dodo this past couple weeks. And so that's big news. Maybe we can talk about that in the show.
Sounds like a great idea. Look forward to it next time.
Yeah. Next time, guys. We will see you later. You have a great week. Bye, Greg.
See ya.
Oh, no. Exit music. Where is it? Here it goes.